Welcome back to another episode of Have Game Will Travel. I'm your host, Bennett Newsome, also known as Bennett in the gaming community. But as the director of esports growth and development here at Full Sail University, I'm super passionate about exploring the diverse world of esports and gaming beyond just skill level. So whether you're a first-time listener or a returning fan, we're thrilled to have you joining us. But let's get a virtual journey through the experiences of industry professionals. So get ready to engage with our guests and learn from their perspectives. And remember to ask your questions in chat. We'll get them featured on the show. But sit back, enjoy the ride as we kick off another episode of Have Game Will Travel with my good friend Anissa Peoples, our Armada Community Specialist here at Full Sail University. Anissa, welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going. Today was a good day. I got to see everybody in the office.
Yeah, it was work from the office day here at Full Sail, which is which is always a fun day to see everyone that you haven't seen in at least a week. But for us in esports, we saw everyone very recently as we hosted the NACE Grand Finals here on campus, which was pretty awesome. Let's start the show with who you are, what you do. Tell me about it.
Okay. So, hi everybody. My name is Anissa Peoples. You may know me on the internet as Queen of Salt. I am I am the community specialist at Full Sail University. Hold on, I gotta close chat. Okay, it's
You're
the
smiling.
that's really distracting.
It's hard. It's hard
I
to see them
also,
talking about you and you'd be like, oh, I'm right
yep.
here.
I also occasionally do stream on Twitch. I do community work. I am a assistant barista with Esports and Coffee. In short, if it's gaming, I like to do it.
That's awesome. So at the NACE Grand Finals here, what was your role? What were you doing to
Um,
help sail that
I
along?
got to work with the Ashley of the Year, AJ, and we got to do registration. So we got to see everybody first thing in the morning. And then if anybody came and wanted to spectate or had questions about where to go, what to look for, I even got to help somebody figure out where to exchange currency in Orlando, which is surprisingly fewer places than you would expect.
Yeah, I like
So
that.
I got to see everybody.
That's awesome. Well, good. Well, let's start off. Talk to me about kind of your journey. Where did you get started with gaming? How did this all kick off for you?
It's been a wild ride. I've always been a gamer. I have super early memories of playing Duck Hunt on my dad's little, tiny CRTV in
Yeah.
his computer room when I was probably 3. But I really started getting into gaming more and more around the era of the Wii.
Okay.
I did have like a GameCube. I played Sonic the Hedgehog and stuff, but my first big kind of hardcore game was Black Ops 1 for the Wii, which if you've played it, you know that is not the best place to start.
On the Wii though, that's
But
great. Hey, you play it where you've got it though, right? Like
exactly. And it was kind of my gateway into, big kid gaming. But I would say the biggest influential game I've had was Destiny. I was part of a absolutely huge community of women who play Destiny completely a decade ago now.
yeah.
Absolutely insane. It's been a decade. I was a member of the Dames of Destiny.
Yep.
I was the PC head admin for them for a while as well. And when I got to college, I was like, "Hey, I want to keep doing stuff like this. Where do I go?" Because originally I wanted to do game dev. The thing is, I'm not a great artist. I don't enjoy art. I was hoping I could just kind of push through and get to a point I enjoyed it. I did not enjoy it. So I was like, okay, well, I could just work in community. I like people. I've been doing this for a couple years already. So I did some research, got an English degree, and got involved with the gaming club on campus. I was an officer for them for 4 of my 5 years, I think. That sounds right. And then I moved into the inaugural esports team at Shawnee State. I played Overwatch for 1 semester, got really burned out, decided that probably wasn't the best move, and stepped back and went back to community stuff in the gaming club, stuck with that till graduation. After that, I got really lucky and started working at Shawnee State in a more like sports information capacity for esports, which is a really cool concept I'd never even thought of doing. And then I got to do it for 2 years, and now I'm here.
Yeah. I love the connection to Destiny that so many people have. Obviously, myself with Zur, and just that's where I started streaming as well. And just having you have that same connection, and like with the first time that you told me that you were part of that group, like I was like, oh, that's crazy. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like this is not
Yeah.
something that's foreign. It's very easy to understand, which is cool. And I see that a lot. I mean, obviously, Destiny is Destiny, and it is in a weird place, but so many people have intersected through that community, and it's always funny how we always get someone ask, hey, is there a Destiny competitive team when they come to Full Sail? Unfortunately there is not, but it is always a fun question. Talk to me a little bit about your current role as the community specialist here at Full Sail. What does that job entail? Talk to me about like a day in the life of Anissa.
Uh, the days of my life are all very different, and that's what I love. I love the varieties, the spice of life. Some days I have a lot of meetings. I consider myself kind of a bridge between our student community and our staff to where I can help interpret maybe what they're thinking, what they're saying, but don't know how to articulate well into something that we can implement or
Yeah.
take action on. Otherwise, I might be planning an event for our students. I know today I was working on posters for our club gathering event, which I'm going to shamelessly plug, is on May 18th.
May 18th. Let's go. What
So
what
I do a little bit of everything. I love it.
yeah, what typically goes on at the club gathering for maybe someone that is not a Full Sail student or has never been to a club gathering? What does that really entail?
So our club gatherings are an open LAN style event. You bring your own controller, console, computer, whatever word starts with C. It's a BYOC event. And you come in, we have space, we have tables, we have power, we have internet, and you can share in your game. We have some folks that bring solo games like Beat Saber and just go ham and enjoy the vibes.
Yeah.
There's usually pizza, and we hang out for 5 hours, eat pizza, play games.
I love it. I love it. You were recently nominated for the Community Champions category at the Gamehers Awards. Talk to me about seeing your name in that nomination and what that meant to you.
It's been an absolutely wild experience. I am not very good at being kind of in the forefront. I'm very much that kind of person who likes to hide in the shadows and let other people take the spotlight. So, getting that email that, "Hey, you've been nominated," was kind of surreal, and I didn't know what to do with this information. I was sitting here like, "Okay, uh, that's scary." But I'm taking it especially as an opportunity to learn to be out front.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is great to be in the back and let other people shine, but we have to remember to let ourselves shine, and
Yeah.
that's something I'm learning throughout this whole process.
Absolutely. And I was like, hey, come on this show and be the center of focus here, right? Like
Yeah, I
can't
was
can't
sitting there
hide
with
on
the
this
same
one.
thing, and it was, "Are you sure?"
I love that. Looking back, you kind of gave us the synopsis of your journey so far, and looking back at your time at Shawnee State, talk to me about what helps you really kind of prepare, for a career in esports and community management.
So I took a bit of a unorthodox route. Originally, I was like, maybe I could get into casting with an English degree. I'm good at words. It gets me as far away from math as possible. If you've known me very long, I'm very proud of the fact that I passed my only math class by 1%. I'm terrible at math. Words are definitely my thing. And then I got further into this degree, and I was like, okay, I have this communications track within the English program because Shawnee State doesn't have a communications degree. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe not casting. I do stream. It's not great. What else can I get into? And then I looked at what happens in the gaming industry, what
Yeah.
other positions exist. And I was like, wait a minute. I follow Deej from Bungie. I follow DMG from Bungie.
Yeah.
They're community managers. And I looked up what that meant. It was all stuff I was already doing because I was well into my time with Dames of Destiny at this point.
Yeah.
And it was all stuff I knew how to do. I enjoyed doing. It was something I chose to do as a hobby. And I was like, okay, this sounds like it would be really fun to do. So I kept going with that until I think 2020 is when I finally stepped away in general, and I really missed it. So seeing the opportunity to be the Armada Community Manager Specialist, however you want to word it,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I got to jump on this.
Yeah. Absolutely. We were big fans of you. Obviously, we knew of you from Shawnee State, and you also had some other roles there at Shawnee State. You were part of the state athletics, and then the Chronicle, which was like that was kind of like the school newspaper, if I
Yes,
researched
I
correctly.
was the assistant editor of the Shawnee State Chronicle for I think 2 semesters, maybe one. It's been a minute. I don't really remember. I forgot I had done it until I saw it on the little blurb. I was like, wait a minute, I did do that. So I worked alongside the actual editor, and we proofread and chose from our classmates who were in the journalism courses to help create a newspaper, which was in the peak of COVID. So it was probably digital. I think I'm like 80% that it was. There's
Yeah.
no way we went to the printer in the middle of COVID. So
What sort of lessons do you take away from that? Because I feel like here at Folsom we're always talking about like hands-on learning and project-based learning, and I know for me like that's the only way that I do learn is by actually like, okay, let me go do the thing, like, and then make a
mhm.
couple of mistakes along the way, and then oh, okay, that makes sense now, right? Like, so what sort of things did you kind of take away from your time doing those two things?
So hilariously, I'm also a project-based learner. I have to do it. I have to make the mistakes and be like, okay, I can just, do this differently. And the biggest thing I think I learned was how to give constructive feedback.
Okay.
As somebody who didn't take feedback well, I've gotten a lot better at it. But when I was younger, I didn't really take it well. It was always my brain would kind of be like, "Oh, they're attacking me. It's not good enough." And then learning, especially through providing feedback,
Yeah.
that it can be done in a way that's, "Hey, this is great. Let's make it better together." It was absolutely a game changer from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I think that helps you grow, right? Like, okay, I've accomplished this now. I've started here, and I can then add that to my repertoire of things that you're doing, bring that with you, which makes for a much more impactful, career. You've had this community management aspect of your life, like you mentioned, like for over a decade. What keeps you motivated and passionate about moving forward in this space?
I think it's the fact that I can make a difference. Um, if anybody's known me long enough, they know that if I can affect a space positively, I want to do it. If I can help somebody, with their homework, or help somebody become a better writer, or just help somebody have a better time at an event, I want to do that. I love being able to help people, and knowing that I can make a difference for our students
Yeah.
and for our community is the most fulfilling thing.
Yeah. And you've done this all throughout your career already. Like you were a community manager for Safe Gamers that was really trying to help, and create opportunities for exclusivity in, the space. And like, I think that was something that was super important. So you talk to me a little bit about your time with Safe Gamers.
Yeah, so Safe Gamers was definitely kind of taking what I learned at Dames and running. So I didn't really get into Safe Gamers, which is their sibling clan. It's Dames' sibling clan.
Okay.
Um, until much later in life. So I kind of grew up with Dames, and then I was like, okay, I'm an adult now and I'm ready to really get into this in a more impactful way. And so I was given the opportunity to become their community manager, and I definitely that was my first taste of what I'm doing now. It was my first taste of, okay, I can gather feedback from my community. I can, compile it. I can figure out the biggest points and how to bring it in a way that's empathetic and constructive and kind.
Love that.
It was one of the best parts of Destiny for me was being in Safe Gamers and Dames.
Yeah. It really makes something more impactful when you have some like it to share with other people, right? Like there's like playing the game is fun, yeah, everybody enjoys that, but like when you actually get to meet up with people that you care about and that you've met and you've grown with along those what 10 years now that we've played this game, it means a lot more, right?
Yeah, those relationships that I've made in Destiny are some of the most influential and impactful ones I've ever made. I've had a friend, we've quite literally grown up together at this point. We met when I was still in high school, and he was a couple years younger than me and also in high school. And we've both graduated college now. We both have our first big kid jobs. And we're just sitting here like, oh my goodness, we've been here the whole time.
Yeah. Big kid jobs. I like that. What do you think is like the most overlooked aspect about building community in esports?
In esports specifically, I think a lot of the times we don't think about how impactful these relationships are. Like I just said, I met one of my closest friends and I've talked to him effectively every day for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think, especially from an outside perspective, people don't think about that. When you think about people who play, example, World of Warcraft, it's like, oh, they get on, they raid for like 3 hours, and I never get to see them because they're always with their online people. But they're also building these
Yeah.
relationships that are so important and so integral to their everyday. How many other activities do you get to meet up with the same group of people, for hours on end and enjoy your time together for decades?
Yeah. That's true. With like the aspect of content creation and being a part of a community revolving around a streamer or a game like Destiny, what are some things that people can do to try to really build that community, focus on that community first aspect of what they're trying to build? What are some easy tips for success there from your experience?
I think the biggest thing that I always think of when I think about communities and building communities is that we don't want to just build connections. We want to build relationships. Connections are cool. I can say I have a mutual on Twitter,
Yeah.
but that doesn't sound very impactful when you think about it that way compared to, hey, I've got a guy that I play games with, 5 or 6 times a week, or I've got this streamer that I've interacted with every day for 4 years.
Yeah.
It's so much more impactful when you build a relationship instead of just a connection.
Absolutely, yeah. We have our first question here from chat. It comes from Jacob's Nachos. Yes, what are some tips that you have for folks that might have a good idea for an event for their esports community, but may not know how or what to do with that idea?
Okay. So for our full sailors, your first step would definitely be to send me a DM. But in a broader sense, I think finding somebody who maybe has been there before, who can give you advice, especially if it's your first event and you have no idea where to start.
Yeah,
It's good to rely, or maybe not even rely, but talk to other people who have already been there. That way we can create, knowledge together. Well, what have you learned from this?
yeah,
Say I've learned, hey, don't do this giant event on one day, make it 2 days. Or, don't plan it on Tuesday at 2 p.m. because nobody's around. It's being able to build off of and learn from one another would definitely be the best first step.
yeah. Feeding back into that community, right? Like looking, hey, I've got a good idea.
Hmm.
Let's talk to more people about it. Then bring it to someone like you. Say, hey, here's our idea. We've talked amongst ourselves, right? And we've
Yeah.
got to really, we've worked it out to this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then you can learn, okay, so what's the next step you took?
Yeah,
Okay, so I can take that step and then I can go from here and then it becomes, you have that missing piece and you can start making connections yourself.
absolutely. How do you define like how a community is doing? Like, how do you know that it's a strong and supportive gaming community, or like how do you know that it's getting into the toxic category? Like, what sort of things are you looking for as a community manager to try to define those things?
I think a lot of stock needs to be put in just the small day-to-day interactions.
Hmm.
Um, I like to joke that I operate on vibes because it's stuff I don't think about anymore.
Yeah.
I've been doing this so long I don't think about it. But once I actually do kind of think about it, it's the small stuff. It's, hey, I got an A on a test. Oh, that's so awesome. I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
Or, oh man, finals are coming up. I'm so nervous. Oh, what class are you taking? Oh, I had that class. It can be really frustrating. Just the empathy and seeing people make connections with their own experiences in a way that's supportive or validating.
Yeah. What happens when it is going into that toxic world? Like what steps do you as a community manager try to take to not nuke the server, but like also
Yeah.
try to reel it back in?
Um, I've tried a multitude of approaches. I know one that worked for a long time that I used, especially in the early days, was just redirection. You know,
Hmm.
if we were like, "Hey, the vibes are getting kind of bad in here. They're talking about something really heavy, or somebody's getting kind of backed into a corner," my fellow moderators and admins would all, jump in and be like, "Hey, look at this cool meme," or whatever, because it was like
Look at the cat.
2016.
The cat's over here.
Yeah, exactly. We would jump in with something more positive and it would
Right.
typically fizzle out, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to sit down and have, a hard conversation. And that was something that one of my fellow admins taught me was like, Queenie, you need to learn how to have hard conversations.
Yeah.
Because I was, 18. I didn't like confrontation. I still don't like confrontation. But I also recognize that sometimes you have to sit down and just get the difficult
Yeah.
stuff out and get, all the air cleared and really get things rebuilt in a way that can be civil, even if they're, the other party isn't going to be, your friend or anything. You just have to be able to coexist. And that's a line that I've used a lot. You don't have to get along, you have to coexist.
Yep. Absolutely. How do you balance kind of the needs of students, casual players, community members, and then like the more competitive, gamers with your role as the community specialist here at Full Sail?
I think we're really lucky with how things are already structured here at Full Sail with we have a little bit of something for everybody. We've got our competitive teams, we've got stuff for folks who want to go play competitive Overwatch or Call of Duty or, Marvel Rivals. Um, and say, our casuals who like me aren't really into stuff. I've never played a ranked game of Marvel Rivals. I will
Okay.
say it. I'm very proud of that fact. But I also recognize that our community nights, which are their pickup game styles,
Right.
I could probably hop in and not feel scared because I know that it's a bunch of people who, yeah, some of them are working on improving skills, which is cool. Maybe they're hoping to go compete, or they're just here to goof off, blow off some steam after some difficult work, or
Yeah.
they're just here for the memes, here to joke around and have fun. But it's a great way to, especially, I've lost the plot. Hold on. It's great because there's already a little bit of everybody, and
Yeah.
having that outlet already exist gives room for our casual players to shine.
Okay. Yeah.
At our
Yeah.
club gathering, we have a bracket, but also we have people bring Just Dance,
Yeah.
and they just hang out and play
Is
Just
it
Dance.
you that brings Just Dance by chance?
It was at first, and then other people started bringing it, and I
Okay.
had the most giddy moment.
I love that. I love that. So tell me this. Okay, you talked about community night. How does one participate in community night?
So any student can host a community night. We have students who are officers host them. We have, just, a random community member who may want to host them, which has actually been more often than, even varsity players or people who are, considered leaders for that
Right.
community. It's been a lot more of just, hey, I want to host a community night. Let's go play, Splatoon.
Right.
And so people join in voice chat and then they hop in game together, whether that's a lobby or they do custom games, and then they just play the game together.
Love that. Something about you that I've always really liked and respected is you have a very broad knowledge of games. Obviously, from like Overwatch to community games, but I also feel like you are spot on with the vibe, and you know what is the right move to take. So, community night could consist of Jackbox games, or going into Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, for example. But how do you tend to stay up to date on all of these things? I feel like that's got to be a lot of time spent in making sure you know the aspects of what you're dealing with.
So I'm really lucky that I surround myself with a lot of people who just have broad interests. I've got friends who play World of Warcraft, or
Right.
friends who play Overwatch hardcore, or friends who just really like to play Animal Crossing. And so surrounding myself with those people who I know are going to be able to tell me anything I want to know about, their favorite thing and love talking about it. I can send them a DM and be like, "Hey, what's with this new Overwatch
Yeah.
event? Why are there Gundams in Overwatch? What did I miss?" And they'll be like, "Oh my goodness, you're not going to believe this."
Yeah.
And so being able to surround myself with a variety of people really makes it even better.
And I think that's great because it's like asking questions. You're not afraid to be like, hey, I don't have the answer to that. And I feel like there's a lot of times in this space there's someone that'll be like, oh yeah, I know it's, and yep, and they're just afraid to say no. Like what is that, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
really respect that about you and your ability to just say, hey, I don't know what that is. Tell me more. Like what's going on here.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing when people tell me stuff they're knowledgeable about that I have no idea about because people get so excited to tell you about their favorite thing in the
Yeah.
world. It is the coolest feeling.
People love to talk, and a lot of times about the things that they're passionate about too, right? So it's just
Mhm.
like sometimes you just got to get out of the way and let them share all of the fun things with you. What advice do you give to students, especially like aspiring professionals who also want to do what you do and work in community management?
I think the biggest piece of advice is to know your boundaries. You know, especially
Yeah,
working in community, it can be really easy to kind of marry yourself to the community and let that become your identity. And while it's really good to be a part of the community, of course, you know, you want to be a part of this community, you want to love it like they do. You also have to remember that, you know, at the end of the day, it can become something that burns you out.
yeah, yeah.
I know I spent a lot of time in esports and gaming one semester in college and I burnt myself out. I spent the next semester just doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And so my whole thing has been, you know, burnout prevention and making sure you take time to learn to knit or do
Yeah.
a puzzle or do something outside of gaming.
Yeah.
Make sure you keep yourself in there too.
Is that what you would, how for you yourself, like how you approach and stay clear of burnout is like, I'm gonna go learn how to knit now, like, or
Yeah,
do you
I've
have
been
other
learning to
things?
knit and it's been just okay, I'm tired of thinking about video games for a little bit. I'm going to go knit or I'm going to go
Yeah.
read a book. I find something off of a screen, you know, working hybrid, working remotely, especially in today's world, we spend a lot of time on screens and my eyes get tired.
Oh yeah.
So I've learned other things.
Yeah. Chat's roasting you, saying you might as well mention the several hours you spent learning League as well. So that's always good. It's funny though, because like your gamer tag, Queen of Salt, for the longest time, I just thought you were really into League of Legends with NACL. Like, so talk to us about the name. Let us know
Okay,
how the
okay.
origin story here. You know.
I'm imagining some of the folks in chat were there for these days. My tag until my freshman year of college was Metalhead6112.
Wait, what? The new lore just dropped. Like,
Yep.
go on.
And I was starting to stream. I was in college. You know, the esports team was on the horizon. I was like, I do not want Metalhead with a bunch of numbers on my jersey. And I was like, okay,
Meaty.
well, I do pageants, or I did at the time. I don't anymore.
Okay.
And so I could be queen of something. And at the time, my group of friends was like, you say that you're salty all the time, just about, you know, random inconveniences. You know, oh my goodness, the lens fell out of my glasses. I'm so salty.
Yep.
Just be the queen of salt.
There you go.
And I was like, okay. And that it started with Pokemon Go. That's where the big rebrand started. And it was Queen of Salt, the word. And then I went to change my Xbox tag and it was taken. So I was like, okay, we got to pivot. We got to make this cooler. And one of my co-admins and dames was like, just do sodium chloride. It sounds way better. And those who get it are going to get it.
Yep.
And you can still keep your brand. And I was like, okay. And now I wish I could go change my tag on Pokemon Go because it's
Yeah.
way better this way.
I love that. So, but we're gonna go back to the metalhead things. Is this you are a big metal fan? Like, how did
Yeah,
that? How was that
I
your
have
first?
been. So especially as a teenager, at the time, my favorite band was Metallica. I've
Okay.
shifted a little bit in the hard rock category. I gotta say, it's still 3 Days Grace. Mostly with Adam. The new stuff is okay. It's just not my vibe as much. But I've always been into kind of hard rock and
Yeah.
stuff. And then I've broadened my interest. You know, if you've seen me on Twitter or on Blue Sky or any other social media, you've probably seen that I talk about like Taylor Swift and other, you know, music genres now.
Yes.
But at the same time, I like being multifaceted with my music taste.
Okay. Well, then I get to recommend the best playlist ever. It's Taylor Swift but metal on Spotify,
Okay.
and you're welcome.
Okay. You're
You're
gonna have to
welcome.
send me a link to this later. I need it.
Okay, we gotta get this show back on track because we have gone
Yeah.
off the rails here. Talk to me about esports and coffee. Obviously, we're all very familiar with esports and coffee, but tell us a little bit about what you do there and kind of like your work to broaden the mission of building gaming communities in a positive space.
Yeah. Funnily enough, it's a lot of the same stuff. I do, I keep an eye on chat, keep things, chill. It's never been a problem. Esports and Coffee
Yeah.
has the most wonderful community I've ever been part of. But, I um, you know, bring content to the table. I bring insight for episodes if I have it, which is very not often because those ladies are on the pulse of this community. They've never needed me, but I hope I help. And I generally just kind of keep chat awesome. Um, Otherwise, I just love what they do. It's a big deal in esports, especially for, women and other people to find their voice that maybe aren't part of, the group you would expect to see. We see a lot of the same faces and then seeing this, and I was like, okay, I know all these ladies, but maybe not everybody else does. And they kind of banded together and made something awesome. And getting to be a part of that means I can be a part of something awesome, even quietly.
Yeah. That's awesome. What is a community manager? I mean, you now have multiple community roles that you're working simultaneously. Like, what is that? Do you have crossover in those moments? Are there things that like, oh, this will work here as it works there, or that didn't work here, but it's working over here? I wonder why that is.
So I recently hosted a Jackbox night in the Armada Discord,
Yeah.
and that was inspired by a Jackbox night I hosted in Esports and
Okay.
Coffee like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this was fun with the Esports and Coffee folks. Let's see if the Armada students like it.
Yeah.
And it was well received, although we had a small crowd. So I'm hoping to bring it back and
Yeah.
pick a better day because I think that was a huge thing. I picked the Esports and Coffee time, maybe not the Armada time.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. How does so there's let's say there's a member of the student community that was like, hey, I really like this, I want to help do this more often. What's their best approach to helping make that happen?
Um, Realistically, especially with community nights, I would be like, okay, pick a day, if you want to do it regularly. I know we have one student who does Rocket League every single Sunday.
Hmm.
And, whenever you want to do it, if you want to do it regularly, I can hop in with you. Or if you own the games, you don't really need anything from me unless you want it. And at that point, it's very personalized. Oh, are you a little nervous? Do you need just like the FAQ? How can I help you is a lot of my approach to everything because not everybody's going to have the same needs.
Yeah. With being a community manager, obviously we've seen the ebbs and flows of popularity with the managers over at Bungie and how they have had some rough times. What sort of challenges have you faced and encountered along your journey, and how have you overcome them?
I think I have a really big one that comes to mind, and it was from when I was at Safe Gamers. We had a time where our head admin was going through a really tough personal time, and he was like, "Hey, I just need to step away." And I was like, "Okay, well, we can take over, any kind of duties you may have in the meantime." It ended up being mostly me taking them over, which I was in college at the time, so it was a little easier to balance.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it was like, okay, this is a lot. I need to start keeping a planner and start keeping better track of everything. And now I keep, either a whiteboard or a chalkboard on my wall because I've learned that it helps me to have everything scheduled out.
Right.
And I wouldn't have known that without that.
Yeah. So writing things down, scheduling your time, and your
Hmm.
tasks, more importantly, probably, right?
Yeah. I have a terrible habit of letting things slip through the cracks if I don't write them down. And I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. But you learn it. You learn by doing, right? That's what we were talking
Hmm.
about earlier. Is that
Yep.
sometimes you make mistakes and you have to go, okay, yeah, that sucked. Let me figure this out. Let me make sure that doesn't happen
Yep.
again. I
Being a
think
kinesthetic learner is a lot of iteration.
yeah, absolutely. The thing that I've always been like envious on the community management side is there's like, I know that it's easy to like connect with people and be like, okay, you're an elevated, you're a mod now, right? And then you trust them, and then they do something that goes against all the things that you were building, right? And you have these difficult situations. How do you approach those things when it's someone you care about and they've done something that hey, you're hindering the community now. Like, what sort of, how do you approach those types of disputes when you don't want them to leave and you don't want them to just abandon everything together, but figure out how you can meet in the middle and continue to build the community that you're working towards.
I think a huge part of it is trying to put myself in their shoes and seeing what their needs are and how we can either meet in the middle to meet their needs and ours. Because oftentimes people are acting out in ways that we find uncharacteristic because something else is going on.
Right.
And sometimes it's, hey, do you need to talk about this? Are you okay? And, sometimes they just need to talk about it and they're back to normal. Other times, it may be, okay, well, maybe let's have you take a step away, let's lessen your load. Is one that I've had to use before is just let's lessen your load. Let's give you a breather and
Yeah.
then maybe we can, reevaluate later. And sometimes, unfortunately, we just misread people and that's the hardest part because then we have to sit here and grapple with, okay, well, I don't want to just remove them, but at the same time, you become stuck between a rock and a hard place, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the hardest one to navigate. It's one I hope I never become a professional at navigating. I don't ever want to misread people and put
Yeah.
myself in that position.
Mm-hmm.
So, oftentimes it's seeing what their needs are and how we can meet them.
At this part of your journey, what, a decade in, what's been the most memorable moment for you, or something that stands out from your time as a community manager?
Oh man, that's a difficult one. It's funny because it just happened. I being nominated for the community champions category in the gamehers awards because I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm actually making a difference,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's a really small reminder. Even just being nominated
Yeah.
is huge, but it's just one of those things that like somebody thought of me enough to nominate me. I thought I just stood in the background, I stay in the shadows and then somebody still thought of me.
Yeah.
And that's been a huge huge revelation for me and it's been a big imposter syndrome breaker, which is great.
That's good to hear, because I think that a common thread through a lot of the conversations that we have on the show is about that imposter syndrome, where I'm interviewing people that are at a very high level, and they're like, I don't think I belong here. And you're like, what are you
Mhm.
talking about? And to hear that even something like this nomination to come through and just say, hey, you know what? I do belong here. I'm doing the right thing. This is awesome.
Mhm.
Congratulations to you for not only the
Thank
nomination,
you.
but I think that's so important, because it is such a hard thing to get over when you feel like, hey, I don't belong here, and I
Mhm.
am out of my league, and when in reality you're right where you belong. So
Yeah,
that
I think one of our Hall of Famers from this year's induction class in 2025 put it in her speech the best. Real imposters don't have imposter syndrome. And I want to frame that and
yeah,
stick it on a wall because that is the best thing that I could ever hear. And
yeah,
I want to share that with everybody in the whole world. Real imposters don't have imposter syndrome.
that is a great quote. I love that. So, okay, so talk to me about the future. Like, in my eyes, you're making a huge impact with what you're doing here at Full Sail. What does the role of a community manager play in the realm of collegiate esports?
It's something I hope that more programs really implement is somebody to just work with the community, whether that's working with their teams, working with, if they have a club community like we're, lucky to have. I know Shawnee State had one when I got started because I ran the club beforehand. Um, it's having somebody there to really tend to them. Not only does it give them room to flourish and build something that you can work from, it also takes some of the weight off of maybe a program director or a head coach or even student staff or other various staff because they don't have to worry as much about, oh, Shawnee GG's working on this, just dance event. I really need to make sure I reserve the room. You have somebody whose whole job is, hey, they're working on this event. That could be really cool. Or, hey, our team's wanting to travel to Battle for Florida
Yeah,
and we need a chaperone. It's a second set of hands that is not worrying about the big picture.
yeah, yeah. What do you think is missing in making more schools like adopt the idea of having a community manager on staff?
I think a lot of programs focus solely on the competitive
Yeah.
and the upper echelons, and we don't always think about, you know, Anissa from Shawnee GG who wants to play Just Dance,
Right.
who doesn't have any interest in competing in Overwatch anymore, and she just wants to hang out and have a
Yeah.
good
Have
time
a good
and
time.
support the teams.
Absolutely.
It's we get really laser locked onto the tournaments and the accolades and
Hmm.
the trophies and the competitive that we forget about the students
Yep.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And speaking of that, like what separates the Armada community from others that you've worked with? Was there anything unique that you see in your time so far here at Full Sail?
I think one of the most special parts about the Armada community is that they are all so passionate. They have their dream, they have what they want to do, and they're going to pursue it, they're going to create it, and they're going to make it. It may not be perfect the first time, but they're going to iterate on it. They're going to take that knowledge with them. It's their dream. And I absolutely love that. I love seeing students be passionate about things. I love seeing everybody be passionate about things. And so seeing them take that and create something with it, since Full Sail is very project based,
Yeah.
it's it makes them really special.
Yeah, I like the uniqueness aspect of it. Most students that come to Full Sail, they know what they want to do, which is a very rare
Mhm.
thing in college. Most people change their direction a couple times while they're in school figuring it out. But our students here at Full Sail, they really know, like, hey, I want to do this, and if it's not
Mhm.
exactly that, it's slightly over to the right. Like it's okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
do this instead. But it's really inspiring to watch these students and how much passion they have, towards their goals, and I think it's great that we all get to be around that and lift that up. Um, uh,
Mhm.
I know that as you've gone through your journey here, both at Full Sail and Shawnee, like you've had opportunities to strengthen the communication that goes out about the community, and I would love to get your take on like effective. Or how effective things like social media are and digital communication to strengthen the core of the community, and just really kind of understand your thoughts of what that looks like.
So I think especially with the kind of generational gap we've got, we've got the oldest end of Gen Z, which is me. We're here, we're becoming professionals, we're in college. Um, a lot of Gen Z people especially can see through and make sure you're genuine.
Yeah.
As somebody, I ran the social media for Shawnee State Esports when I was working over there, and sometimes I even felt like, okay, this post of just a game score, it just feels hollow, but it was typically because we got rolled. Sometimes you just have a bad game and you
Yeah.
really don't want to post about it,
Yeah.
but you're obligated to.
But you should. You
And
should.
then, yeah, I think the social media part is that they can tell when you don't want to be there and you don't want to post that 0 and 3, but they know you have to.
Yeah.
And then, the stuff where you're genuinely excited about it, or it's something that's genuinely good and they can feel it's genuine,
Yeah.
they're going to interact with it. They're going to be drawn to it.
Yeah. You've had a long journey in this space. You've been involved with TESPA, Phi Alpha. I probably messed
Theta
that.
Phi
Theta
Alpha.
Phi Alpha. There we go. Okay.
Yep.
Shawnee GG. And I would love to know like the experiences that shared with those three organizations. How did that influence your kind of like your leadership style and how you approach things?
So I think, especially through TESPA and Shawnee GG, I've made sure to keep my feet firmly on the ground. I like being on the ground with the people. They talk about different kinds of leaders. I'm a lead from the middle. I want to be part of the group. I don't want to be, sitting on top of
Yeah.
the crowd in a throne or anything like that. I want to be part of that and helping them to create something. But through, especially my work with my sorority Theta Phi Alpha, I've learned that sometimes you do have to be more authoritative. I hate being authoritative. I like, I don't want to be in charge per se. I
Right.
want to help craft these decisions. I don't want to be seen as like the boss.
Right.
And so, I've especially learned that way that sometimes you kind of have to be hard and fast about rules. I was the ritual chair for Theta Phi Alpha, which means part of what I did was preserve tradition.
Okay.
And on a national level, they're like, hey, here's what you need to do. And I also recognize that sometimes on a little bit lower level, they don't always get done exactly that way. So one of my goals when I had held that chair was to try and nudge it toward what they wanted us to do.
Yeah.
And doing part of doing that was, hey, this is kind of the rules. We don't get a choice in this. As much as I would like to have a choice in this, we don't. And so it's a weird blend of don't think of me as above you, but
Right.
also I'm gonna know the rules and I'm gonna make sure we adhere to them because that's what I'm here for.
Did you get to say "as is tradition" a lot in that role? Because I feel like we need to say that more
I
often.
wish. I hadn't thought about it, and now I'm sitting here wishing I could go back like
missed,
4 years and
missed,
tell myself that.
missed opportunity. Well, as is tradition,
Exactly.
I just say we incorporate that into what we're doing now. We'll just lean
Yeah.
into that a little bit, a little bit more. What do you find, kind of as the like you're going through this, right? Like obviously you've been at Full Sail now for almost a year. Is that where are we
Yep,
at?
it'll be a year on July 8th.
Okay, so we're right there.
We're
That's
almost
awesome.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, what has been the most rewarding part of being here at Full Sail and doing your job?
I've got to say there was one particular moment where it's like if I were laid off tomorrow, I would feel not that's not the word. It would be enough. And that
Okay.
was we had a student a few Have Game Will Travel episodes back who was like, "How do you cope with burnout?" And I had worked with the student. I had seen they were really burned out and there was nothing I could do to help them. I had to just let them take care of themselves. And it sucked feeling helpless about it. And then seeing them be like, "Oh man, I've been really burned out." And they may not have made that connection that I knew, but I saw them make that step. And so that's been the biggest takeaway I've had
Yeah.
on like a it's been rewarding scale is seeing I helped one student and I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
But seeing just small changes in the students as I go is the best part.
Absolutely. It's kind of that whole mindset of that we always talk about is trying to leave the space better than what we found it. And
Hmm.
when you work in collegiate esports, you get to keep carrying that torch and hand it off to students and leaders as they go through the program, and then they eventually hand it back to you, and then you've got to find the next person to hand that to,
Hmm.
and let them carry that as they go. And that's such a like a really cool part of this job. It's also like heartbreaking too when you like,
Yeah.
this is my favorite student ever, and then they go out, but now you get to celebrate them and live vicariously through their journey in their career.
Hmm.
But it is a really cool part of the job is helping these students navigate through that and letting them carry the torch for a while, and hopefully when they give it back, it's in a better spot than when you handed it to them. So
Hmm.
I really think that's an important piece of a lot of this is kind of that mentorship approach, and you've always kind of had that as well, at least in my eyes, that you've approached your position with like mentorship and leadership in mind when it comes to working with students across not only just the Armada community, but at Shawnee State as well, and in the other roles that you've had as a community manager. I would love to learn more about kind of your thoughts on where mentorship and leadership land as a community leader, and how much is letting the students or members of the community figure it out for themselves.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges as well is you have to learn to let go.
Yep.
I am still an advisor for my sorority chapter back home. They let me do it digitally. And one of the hardest parts is being able to let them kind of scrape their knees and learn the hard
Yeah.
way. I can say, hey, I would do it this way. People don't always listen.
No.
And I think that's a really difficult part of being a mentor or a leader is knowing you can explain it. You can lead a horse to water, you cannot make it drink. But at the same time, I think it's really important, especially in community spaces, especially in collegiate. These students look up to the staff, they look up to us, they look up to their faculty, and they're like, hey, I want to take and learn this from you. And it's not always the content, it's not always English 101.
Yeah.
It may be, oh, I like how you write in this way. I want to take that and make it my own and learn from it. And so It's insanely important, insanely rewarding, and way more challenging in the middle.
Yeah. Absolutely. Something that has been a big part of, what you've been doing over the last decade is really trying to amplify the role of women and marginalized genders in shaping gaming communities. And if you look across the board, especially in collegiate esports, a lot of teams and organizations are being run by women. I would love to get kind of your 2 cents on how this has been going, and just really your efforts in this space when it comes to the gaming community.
Yeah, I think definitely progression wise, I see it so much more on the top end now.
Yeah.
When I was a student, I would see, some women competing. Obviously, it's still a growing thing, especially as we put women into staff and, faculty positions and put them in positions where they can be seen, because it's one thing I've strived to do as I've moved into kind of leadership type roles is show that if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a mindset I like to tell people, even when it's something as silly as doing his computer, because that's if I can do it, I would like to encourage you to do it, and I will be here to support you every step of the way. And so, seeing especially people that maybe I played against or played with when I was a player, or just created events alongside when I was a student leader, go into these roles and be like, hey, she can do it.
Yeah.
We can do it. And I hope that's a mindset that everybody takes is, sharing if I can do it. And, I want to help you do it too. That way it helps further bring us into the space because it creates a space where they feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think back to a moment early on in the Armada world where Pepto Bismol, who was our Overwatch captain, was playing and streaming on the Armada channel, and I was watching it with my nieces, and they're like, "Wait, who is that? What did she do?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's the captain of the Overwatch." Wait, she can do that? I'm like, yeah, of course. What
Yeah.
do you mean? And it was just kind of like the things clicked all of a sudden, and that was a really
Hmm.
cool moment. And that representation really does matter. Being able to see yourself in the thing that you want to do or that you
Hmm.
are thinking of, but like, oh, I can't do that. But then, bam, there it is. Was such a huge part of that, and such a really important thing. So I'm really glad that you're doing those, those things, and you're taking on those roles, and you're showcasing that this is huge, and this is an opportunity that that you yourself could get into, right? Like that's a really big part of everything that we're trying to accomplish here. As far as the community itself, what do you see emerging in the collegiate esports space when it comes to like the trends and things that are coming? Is it always game based, or is there just other components to this? Is there like a fundraising side of things? Is there opportunities for students to get involved where there weren't before? What sort of trends do you see coming in this space?
I do think you kind of touched on it, and it's something I see in a broader gaming space and not just esports, is that people are really getting into fundraising, especially for charities. I used to follow. I say used to. I still like have followed the GCX
Yep.
folks.
Yep.
I know a lot of our students work with them during the event here, but they also do a fundraising month for St. Jude. I used to follow it really closely, and I see folks fundraising for Extra Life. We did it at Shawnee State. We do it here at Full Sail,
Yep.
and I think it's something even folks in collegiate who may not be super competitive or folks who are super competitive can do, because it's some way to get involved and make a difference,
Yeah.
but also you're still just playing games with your friends. And maybe you do host, a charity tournament, or you just, do a stream where, $5 and I'll play Just Dance with a silly hat on. You know, you can you can take that and you can shift it into what you like and still participate and still create something that's bigger than yourself.
If you're a member of Full Sail's gaming community and you want to participate in Extra Life, how do they get involved?
They would get a hold of me or you.
Yes. That's it. That's it. Plug
Yeah,
done
that's
right
the best
there.
first step. Yep, easy plug.
I love it. I love it. Well, we only have a couple more minutes left before our time is done here, but I do want to give you a couple opportunities to share where people can find you, how to get in touch with you, and we got a couple other questions to do a rapid fire round. But how do people find you? Where are you on the internet? And How
Okay.
do they reach out?
So I'll give a really mashed up version of my Twitch outro. Hi, I'm the Queen of Salt. I like to stream and craft communities here on the internet. You can find me on Twitter/X or Blue Sky at Queen of NACL, same as you see down here. You can also find me on Twitch at the same name. I like to stream MMOs, and I'm working on Just Dance. Maybe I'm working on a little bit of everything right now, but it's a lot of MMOs right now. So
Yep.
come hang out with us. We'd like to have a good time, and it's always great to see smiling faces.
I love that. I love that. I love the Twitch outro. That is perfect. That is something that every streamer needs. You have to end the
Yes.
stream with that. Tell them where they can find you, when you're going to be live next. All of those things very important. But all right, rapid fire round.
All right.
What is something that you've recently learned in your role that surprised you or challenged you?
Um, I think kind of going back to learning to let go has been a big one. Not just here at Full Sail, even though yes, at Full Sail, I have to, this at the end of the day, what I do as a community manager here is I support the students in achieving their goals, whether that's hosting a cool event or, competing on a team. I give them the information they need and kind of let them learn. And sometimes learning that I can't fix everything is very difficult as somebody who likes to help make things better. But I'm learning, and it's a work in progress.
Hey, I love the reality of I can't fix everything. Like that's
Yep.
important. That's an important thing. All right, final question for you. What do you aspire to do in this role or at Full Sail? Is there a larger, goal for you here? And what does that look like?
Um, it's funny because this is my dream job, and I'm kind of just living the dream right now.
Yes, I love
So
that.
coming up with an aspiration, it's really just continue to strengthen the community, give them opportunities, help them create their own opportunities, and like making sure all of this is done in a way that gives all of our members an awesome experience is the absolute pinnacle.
Absolutely. I love that. I think it's such an important piece to think about. I mean, when I was in college and we hear this all the time, like, man, I wish we had these things that we're doing,
Mhm.
putting on events like the NACE grand finals. Like that's, wow. What a cool
Yeah,
thing to be a
absolutely.
part of. Right. So, I love that and super excited to see you grow in this role and our community to grow as well. Unfortunately, that is it for us. Our very next episode is going to be on May 15th. So you'll have to come back and check us out on May 15th. We will see you then. Anissa, thank you so much for being here, being a part of the show, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.